A very popular use case in Rest Assured is extracting the data that comes back from the API, either into a string or into another format. So let's look at a couple of examples of how we can actually go about and extract data. So we're going to use this same endpoint again, and we're going to just extract data from the response that we get. So let's write a new test to do this. We'll call this public void get all team data. That will do. And so now we're going to start off slightly differently. Instead of writing the given then, we're just going to declare an empty string, and that's going to hold our response body. Now to get the response body, we'll have to call given again, and we need to specify again the football request spec. And then I'm just going to write it all on one line to keep it short. We'll say when get, and we'll just get that endpoint, the same endpoint that we applied last time. So I'll just copy and paste that in there. And then finally, we just add as string. So this will get that response and convert it into a string for us. So let's just check that. We'll just add a print line for the response body, and let's see what comes back. So we'll run this test, and it should use our football request spec, call this endpoint, and save it as a string for us. And so we can see this is the string with all of the data extracted. So that's how we would just save it into a raw string. Now perhaps instead of just calling it into a string, you might want to do some other assertions on it first. Now to do that, you can use Rest Assured's response class. So let me show you an example of that. So we'll say public void gets all team data, and then to say do check first. So this will do some checks first before it extracts our response. So let's call the Rest Assured's response class. We'll say response. We need to import that. We need to make sure that we import the Rest Assured one, because there might be a few to choose from. Response. And now we're going to use the given when then as before. So we need to specify again our football spec. Okay. We'll do when. I'll just copy this here from now, because we're just getting the same endpoint. Let me just tidy up this a bit, just to make this a bit more readable. So we'll try and do it in the same format that we've done so far, just to keep it consistent. So we have given when. So we're getting that endpoint, and we want to do some checks now before we extract this data. So we're going to use a new one this time. We'll just check that the content that we get back is actually JSON. So we'll say content type. We'll say content type dot JSON. So this is checking that we're actually getting JSON returned. Assuming that we do, we can then go ahead and extract that into our response. So then that would populate this response, and we'd have our response that we could then use later on. So just for completeness, let's convert that response into a string. So we'll say string JSON response as string equals response dot get string. Sorry, response dot as string. Beg pardon. As string. So this is similar to what we did in the previous test above, but this time it does a check first. So let's run that test quickly. So this time it calls that response, it checks that it is content type JSON, and then it extracts that into a string for us that then we can use later on. I hope that's useful. I'll see you in the next lecture.